Well, hello. I'm here with Doug to talk about multivitamins, among other things. And it's and
Oh,
I knew you'd love that one, Doug. And
I
it's
love this one,
and
Sam.
it's
I love
Friday,
this one.
April 25th, 2025. So let me start with the brutal triggering story that says that in fact multivitamins are in fact good for you. Now, there's been a lot of the general truism all my life has been doctors say, oh, this is just garbage. If you eat a balanced diet, all those supplements are trash, like you say. But they actually did a study of 5,000 people over the age of 60 and tried all the different supplements to see what would happen. And they found out that multivitamins have a really strong effect at preventing dementia, slowing cognitive aging by 50%. And, from simple logical point of view, you would think that this would be a way to cover various possible deficiencies in your diet, and that appears to be the case. So you can now complain about it if you want.
Sam, from what I know about dementia, Alzheimer's,
Yeah.
total baloney. Total baloney.
How do you
And
know? I mean, I think we don't really understand Alzheimer's very well, do we?
well, we know that there's aluminum in the brain,
That's true. That's
and
been known that for decades, but
yeah,
that doesn't seem to have anything to do with it, really.
we don't understand for a long time deodorants that contained aluminum were people banned those, or they
Yeah.
weren't banned, but they were avoided.
Oh, yeah. My father threw
And
away all his aluminum cans when this came out, aluminum cooking ware.
yep,
And then it turned out that that didn't seem to matter.
so there's no correlation between on your skin or eating the aluminum
Right.
that's somehow making its way to the brain. And what's interesting is how does the aluminum molecule pass through the blood-brain barrier to get into the brain?
Yeah.
And why only in the brain? And there are changes in the brain. So you got to tell me how they did this study
I think
because
I think they just looked at not particularly Alzheimer's. They just looked at clinical measures of cognitive decline and showed that they slowed down if you take a multivitamin.
baloney. Sam, I
I don't
got I
see any
got
reason to
another.
doubt it. Yeah,
I got one. I don't know if we talked about
yeah,
this. Or let me just say,
yeah,
extraordinary claims. We
yeah.
need extraordinary evidence.
Sure, but I don't see anything particularly extraordinary about this. I would imagine that a considerable amount of minor medical problems are caused by minor vitamin deficiencies. That would seem logical, especially in America where people have pretty crappy diets. That doesn't seem hard to believe at all that if you have 100 people and some of them have a medical problem, some of those are caused by a lack of a vitamin.
Yeah, but that's a third of Americans. A third of adults will come down with dementia or Alzheimer's.
Oh, and that's, yeah, but that's right. But they say this slows the decline.
Oh, slows the
Yeah, that's
decline.
what they said. Yeah, they measured how,
Oh,
yeah, that's what they said.
and what do you measure it against?
I think they just give them the usual cognitive tests like the one Trump keeps bragging about. Can you remember these 5 words for 10 minutes or something?
Yeah, I'm not so sure about this, Sam. I'll
Sure.
give you a corollary to this.
Yeah,
Do you know about the blue zones? I forgot if we talked about this.
I
I
don't
don't
remember
think
it.
we did. So the blue zones are these areas in the world where it's claimed
Oh,
and
yeah.
fact checked that people live to be 103, 105,
Right. We
and
did
and
talk
they're in,
about that, and it's something like they don't keep good records or something.
yeah, well, it turns out one of the places is in Japan,
Yeah.
where the Americans firebombed during World War II and all the records were destroyed. And so people came back to self-report what their age was.
Right, right.
And they inflated their age because that way they could be on getting a pension from the government much earlier.
Yeah, well, you're right to be very suspicious of medical claims like this, especially ones that sell a product. This is like everything, all weight loss products are bolstered by, bogus studies like this. So you're right to be cynical.
Thank you. I
Yep.
would also say that the supplements industry, vitamin supplements,
Yeah.
they can pretty much make any claim that's not a flat out lie.
Yeah.
So they use words like it'll slow the decline or it may help,
Yeah.
words along those lines.
Yeah. Well, That's all. I've heard this one several times. I think there have been several studies suggesting that multivitamins are the exception, and that's the point here. They say all the rest of the supplements showed no significant effect. Anyway,
Well, that's because it was the study was conducted by a company that sells multivitamins.
well, I doubt it, but it's always possible. You're right. By the way, speaking of that,
Yes.
and political corruption, so Trump is doing a lot of crazy things. He's really coming out of the closet and straight up fascist authoritarianism to an extreme extent. I mean, deporting.
Wait, Sam, he's
Yeah.
coming out of the closet?
Oh, yeah. He manages to get worse and worse. I know. And but the one that came out, which I didn't see coming, is he's targeting Act Blue, which is the place where Democratic political donations go, and he just wants to shut it down. And that's one step away from just jailing his political enemies, which he said he was going to do the first time, but then he didn't jail Hillary. Although it's come out that he tried to, and those advisors said, "Oh no, don't really jail her, because that would be bad." But the Republicans are now targeting Act Blue, claiming that they're getting foreign donations, and they need to put in controls to stop, make sure that donations aren't coming from foreign people. So I'm sure they'd like to make you go to an office and show your birth certificate to prove that you have the right to donate to Democrats. So nobody will do it. So we're going to see where that goes. But it's pretty straight up, just rigging the election, just like all the voter suppression they did last time and they've been doing for decades, where they closed down the voting booths in the black districts so people have to wait 8 hours in line and stuff like that. So,
Okay.
uh,
Yeah, we'll see. And
yeah, hopefully we'll see what comes. There's going to be an investigation of this, but it certainly is a way to like really suppress the rival party. Only a small step from Putin, where he would just, or Hungary, where they would just jail them or push them out a window.
yeah. Yeah.
and and So Norway has joined many European countries to launch a special program to lure American researchers, since scientific research is pretty much ending here as they cut all the funding. And the head of NSF just resigned because they cut 55% of the budget and they canceled 400 research projects in progress. So the people are halfway through the research and they say, nope, your money's not coming, which is a really bad idea because, as you probably know, the way this works, the government always was like a year or two late coughing up the money. So all the research universities, like UC Berkeley, are in the habit of fronting the money to the researchers and expecting the government to cough it up later. So when the government just doesn't live up to their promise, they're left holding the bag. And they're cutting
Hmm.
all the funding to the universities anyway. So it's that's why I thought an interesting angle on this at Vox, where they said, Trump wants to fix the trade imbalance, but the number one export of America is university education. We make a lot
Yes.
of money from all those foreign students, and here's Trump destroying the universities and throwing out the foreign students, and then saying, "Hey, why is the trade imbalanced?" Uh,
Yeah, interesting, huh?
well,
Interesting.
interesting is one word for it. Yes, I could think of a few harsher words. But and there's another one too. Seb Gorka has come out and said people who criticize the government and people who criticize deportation or Israel are breaking the law. They are aiding and abetting terrorism. So we should jail people who criticize the government. So there we are, moving in another direction, moving more in the same far right direction.
Yeah, okay. All
And
right.
to that respect, the federal prosecutor has sent off a letter to medical journals now asking them about their policies on competing viewpoints. And of course, the letter is full of phrases that make it clear that this federal prosecutor is interested in deterring scientific rebuttals to the parade of lies that are going to be coming from RFK Jr. Because RFK Jr. is convening, he said by September he's going to know the cause of autism with his
Well,
new
I
research led by the
yeah, I,
guy who has already lost his medical license for claiming that vaccines cause autism. So he already knows the answer. And they're going to like use the threat of federal prosecution to force medical journals to publish this, I think.
so interesting one, Sam. So we do know the cause of some autism,
Do we?
and that, yeah, we do. And that's been known for probably about 20 years,
What
maybe
is it?
more. and it's a genetic defect.
Oh, okay. Well, that would make sense. But then now the big thing people get mad about, like RFK Jr., is there's a lot more autism diagnosis now than there used to be. So he thinks there must be a toxin that's spreading it. Other people say it's just that we're diagnosing it more. I have no idea.
Yeah, so that is an ongoing debate, but you know who discovered that was either Watson or Crick. I think it was Watson of Watson and Crick fame.
But if it was genetic, then it wouldn't be getting worse, right? It would be at some fixed percentage of the population.
Right, right, right. And again, it's not all cases. It's about
Right.
20-25%.
Yeah.
And it's known exactly or you know fairly know it's on the DNA, you know, on our chromosomes, it's known where that occurs.
Yeah.
So this could be, you know, other genetic defects that we haven't discovered yet. And you're right, that could be caused by environmental or other issues.
Yeah.
And here, you know, I'll throw out a couple of them that might be a cause. And before you say, boy, that doesn't sound right, I'll give you some supporting evidence or corollary evidence to support my claim. And that is, it could be plastics or it could be drugs, birth control pills,
Sure.
something along those lines.
Sure. Or the forever chemicals in the water. There's lots of things going on.
Yeah, yeah. And while you say, that doesn't make sense.
Oh, it does make sense to me. I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
change what people are ingesting, put in weird chemicals, it might have weird effects.
Yeah. So there's a chemist that is responsible for poisoning the entire world, and that's the one who decided, working with General Motors, that we needed to add lead into gasoline.
Right. I heard about this. Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember when
and
I was a kid, that was everywhere. No knock gasoline. Get the leaded gasoline. It's so much better
yeah,
than the other stuff.
yeah, and the reason it was developed about 100 years ago is because Ford's cars, Model Ts, would run on pretty much any fuel, but GM, the rival competitor, made a less, I'll say, an inferior engine, meaning that it wouldn't run as wide variety of fuels. And so the engines would knock, so they needed an anti-knock compound, which turned out to be tetraethyl lead.
Yeah.
And that was added to gasoline for 50 years.
Oh, yeah.
And around the 50s, 60s, well, yeah, 50s, 60s, we knew that lead wasn't so good in paint and a lot of other things. There's no safe level for young kids, but it was coming out the exhaust pipes of cars.
Yeah.
So we banned the lead. And what's interesting about this, there's some controversy over this, but I think it's pretty well accepted that lead was not banned across the US overnight. It was phased out.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you know about this, but as it was phased out, there was also a decrease in violent crime in
Yeah.
all the areas. There was a direct relation or link that could be observed between the two.
Yeah.
And we do know that lead makes people violent. It affects the brain, right? And that's one of the symptoms is that people got hostile and violent much more easily.
Well, I'm tempted to correlate this with the red states and Trump because one thing about them is they really love hurting people. They're all about like jailing someone, punishing them, and everything. That seems to be a big emotional drive of it.
Yeah, well, you know, Trump is talking about bringing back coal mining.
Well, yeah, I don't know why he's been pushing that. Nobody wants that. That's
Well,
crazy.
Trump does. Well, the coal mining, right? The coal
I
mining
don't think people
companies.
really want to work in a coal mine. If they say they do, they haven't tried working in a coal mine. I really don't think anybody wants to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And
You
they
know,
can't sell the coal anyway. It's no longer the cheapest fuel. So there's just no
is
point.
that right?
Oh, yeah. In fact, renewables are now cheaper. That's why there's 40% of the whole world's energy production is now renewables because they're cheaper.
Hmm.
It's not from some
Interesting.
altruistic reason. The
I
price of
see. I
solar went
see.
down to where it's actually cheaper.
Yeah, interesting, huh?
That's what's going to change it. Not an
Yeah.
attempt to do good, but the marketplace.
Well, you know, it is interesting because the solar plants that are in the Mojave Desert, the ones with all the mirrors that
Hmm.
people say, what the heck
Yeah.
is this? Space aliens.
Yeah, they're pretty
Those,
funny looking.
yeah, those, they use molten salt. They focus mirrors. They
Yeah.
can store the molten salt for hours at a time.
Yeah.
So, past sunset, that they can still keep producing energy. Turns out that they're too expensive, and they've decided to shut those down by end of
Oh.
this year.
Oh, okay.
So, I guess,
But I
uh,
know even Texas, I think it's like 40 or 50% renewable, and California is like 80% renewable. It's I think California was 100% renewable for like a whole month a couple months ago. So and there are several nations that are like 95% renewable. So it can be
but,
done, and it is
but
happening.
even so what's the source at night for power?
I don't know. That's a good
Yeah.
question. They store it somehow, I guess. From
Yeah,
uh,
because wind and solar
right,
is unpredictable.
right. You have to somehow smooth out the downtimes. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And we use pump storage. Are you
yeah,
familiar with that? That's where you use a reservoir.
yeah. That would seem to make sense. Just lift up a
Yeah,
rock or pump some water uphill would be a logical way to store power.
yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So while you're bringing up, well, anyway, let's go on. What's your next story?
Well, you heard about the hacked crosswalks, right?
Yes, yes, we
Yeah.
talked about that on Tuesday.
Yeah, okay. And then they found out how they did it. I don't remember who talked about that or not. Um, I
No,
thought
so
I
how
thought
did
they'd
the,
actually opened the panel, like ones
yeah.
I saw. It turns out it's easier than that. They were controlled by Bluetooth, and the app you needed was just available on the store. So all you have to do is download the app to your phone, connect by Bluetooth, and then it's protected by a PIN, but the PIN had a default value of 1234. So if people didn't change the PIN, and obviously a bunch of people didn't, then it was that easy. So now they took it out of the store, but
Oh,
there's unofficial copies floating around. You can still get it. So that's pretty easy. You don't even have to open the case. I thought it was harder. So anyway, um, and here's one. We're using Zoom right now. I didn't know this. You can hack people through Zoom. What you do is there's this hacking group called Elusive Comet targets cryptocurrency users. What they do is they turn on the request to take over your machine with Zoom remote control. And this box will pop up saying someone is asking for permission. Well, they change their username to Zoom. And now a box pops up saying Zoom is requesting permission to record your screen, which looks like the other boxes. People will click yes. It looks just like the box that pops up to allow Zoom to work normally. And now you've given a remote controlling machine to the person at the other end. That's pretty awesome. Zoom clearly needs to have like a different box pop up for this or a second box or something. Wait a minute, remote control. This is not the five other permissions we ask you for that don't matter. This is like really important. Anyway, that's a pretty good one, and they're stealing a lot of money that way.
wait, how do they get to the money? Just wallets on
Well, once
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 they
they
have.
can control your machine, they install malware.
Yeah, okay,
And
okay.
and and also they're smart enough. What they've been doing is they've been sending emails to the head of cryptocurrency companies saying, "I'm from Bloomberg Financial. We'd like to do an interview with you and your exciting new crypto products." So they'll do that.
Click here.
Yeah, click. We'll schedule it for next week. This is
Yeah,
your chance to
yeah.
be on Bloomberg. And so when this box pops up saying Zoom needs permission, he said, "Yes, yes, give Zoom permission. This is great."
Ay,
That's a
ay,
good
ay,
one.
ay, ay. All right.
Yeah,
Well, let me catch up with stories. So,
yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg is in the news with his wife. Did you hear about this?
His wife. I haven't heard.
Yeah. So, Zuckerberg and his wife, if I'm not mistaken, is a pediatrician, isn't she?
I don't
And
know.
I know she's a medical doctor. So, anyway, they have the saga with Trump continues. So, they have funded an East Palo Alto school in a low income neighborhood. And they've announced that they're going to close the school. They're going to cut all funding to the school in
There,
alignment.
I think there's
Pardon?
a Zuckerberg Children's Hospital around here. I think I've heard of it. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, anyway, well, this is a school
Mhm.
And I think it's a public school, or it's
Yeah.
a quasi public school is maybe what I'll call it. Anyway, it's East Palo Alto. And because of President Trump's anti DEI initiatives,
Yeah.
they said we're pulling the plug.
So the school is somehow only for minorities or something? What's DEI about it?
Well, so I guess because they teach DEI in
Oh,
the school,
oh,
and I don't know if it's a public school, but I just know it's in East Palo Alto for
well,
low income.
he's misunderstood Trump's technique. What he should do is go to the school and demand that they change the curriculum. That would be in line with Trump's stuff anyway. And I heard he's suffering because Congress wants to regulate and punish Facebook, and Facebook
Yes.
has lobbyists trying to convince people to blame Google instead, which is the old-fashioned technique. When you should just bribe Trump is the modern way you
Well,
solve
he
problems
did
like
he
this.
did bribe Trump.
They didn't bribe him enough, apparently.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's losing the battle on TikTok, at least so far.
Oh
He's
yes,
right.
he wanted to get rid of TikTok.
He
Well,
wants to
TikTok bribed Trump. You just have to outbid them, I imagine. But
right, and Zuckerberg's not playing the
I
game.
know that's right. Just like Bill Gates, he's not to understand the game. What do you mean? Sending lobbyists to like argue your case? No, no. You have a private meeting. You say, hey,
Yes,
I could buy $100 million of Trump meme coin if you made this thing go my way, something like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
But this blends into my next story.
Yeah.
We now know. Remember, I talked about Trevor Milton of Nikola Trucks.
Oh, the guy that tilted the camera.
Yeah, the guy who tilted the camera with the truck, he was going to have hydrogen powered trucks. He was going up directly against
Yeah.
Tesla in coming up with semi trucks. And
Yeah.
he was partnered with GM to produce an all electric truck called the Badger to go in competition with the Cybertruck.
So it's like Elizabeth Holmes. She had a fake product.
Elizabeth Holmes
Yeah.
sort of all over again, except his product was completely fake. I guess her product was fake too.
Apparently so. A product existed, but it didn't work. And I think the same
Yeah.
is true of his trucks. They exist, but they don't work.
Well, they didn't really exist. I mean,
Oh,
they
okay.
they did have a truck, but
Yeah.
it's a little bit different. But
Yeah.
same idea. Anyway, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Turns out we learned this week or late last week why President Trump pardoned him. And it turns out he gave 1.8 million to Trump's reelection campaign back in November,
Right.
and he gave a total of 2.8 million to conservative political causes. Now, for Trevor, who is spending 4 years in Club Fed, that's chump change because off of Nikola Trucks and investors, he has over $2 billion in the bank.
This is the part that's hard to understand. When they convict you of fraud, they don't take the money.
Oh, they were taking the money. So he was out. I don't think he ever had to report to prison, I guess.
But I mean, don't they impound your money when you get convicted of fraud so you don't have that money to bribe people? That would seem like an important aspect of the justice system.
I don't think it was the complete 2 billion. I think it was a
Uh,
portion of it. Now let me
yeah,
continue on here.
yeah,
So Trump, you know how he doesn't state anything, but he suggested that Milton was prosecuted because he supported the president.
right.
Okay. Let's see. And Trump went on to kind of imply, let's see, that this whole thing of him being prosecuted is that he did nothing wrong and that he was one of the first people that supported Trump for president. And so he was being retaliated against.
Yeah.
And Trump said that Milton did nothing wrong.
That's a pretty good scam. A guy bribes you and say, see, he's a supporter. They're punishing him for being a supporter. I'm going to let him off. That's a pretty good racket.
Yeah, so Trump went on to say that Milton did nothing wrong in the Southern District of New York, that's who prosecuted him, were a vicious group of people.
Oh,
Now,
well, he
doesn't
really,
Trump say that?
Well, they've
vicious
gone
group.
after Trump. They've convicted Trump. He hates their guts. That's a
Right.
longstanding grievance there.
So, this is a little tit for tat.
Oh, yeah.
And and we're not done yet. Not only does Trevor get a free I'm not going to jail free card, but Trump also said any monetary settlements that you own all these people who invested in your company, you don't owe it to them. Let them be homeless. Let them
He,
be
he
bankrupt.
can do that as part of a pardon. He can cancel
That's
the
what it
money.
says. That's what it says.
Like most everything Trump has done in his second term, I wonder if this is going to hold up in court. He's really pushing the limit with all the stuff he's doing, far beyond what appears to be legal.
So, Sam, I got a question. Do you have double jeopardy when it comes to a pardon?
I think double jeopardy does apply. If you have been convicted and
Yes.
pardoned, you cannot be prosecuted again for the same crime. I think
So
that is
you,
true.
so you can, yeah, I would agree with that. So you
Yeah.
can't be unpardoned.
Well, that's a very interesting question. I've
Thank
never
you.
heard of a pardon being canceled, but boy, I would sure like to see some of these pardons be canceled. And I don't
Yeah.
know who would have the authority to do that. What if the next president tried to cancel it, or would it be the Supreme Court? I'm not sure there's probably some way to reverse it. There's a way to reverse anything, I guess, but I've never heard of a pardon being reversed. That would be
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it would
And
also mean that everybody is pardoned would live in fear that if it could be reversed, it probably makes more sense for it not to be reversible. I don't know. It's a good
maybe
question.
it's never been challenged. Yeah. So let me just kind of finish this on Milton. So Trevor owns the most expensive mansion in Utah, $50 million. And one of the people that he's made that he can I kind of say robbed, stolen from, committed fraud with.
One of his
Uh,
disgruntled investors that must have a grudge against Trump.
yeah. Well, this turns out to be the wife of a couple that purchased a business from Milton early on for at the tune of $750,000. They put up their house. They took out a loan for $500,000, and they lost it all. And she's now working at Walmart. And Trevor comes in there every once in a while, and she's ready to punch him in the face and saying, you're worth $2 billion, and I'm literally living out of an apartment where I had a nice, middle income home, and
Yeah.
we were going to have a nice business with my husband to retire, and now we have literally nothing because we lost it all.
Yep. Yep. It's
So, but she needs her job at Walmart, so she's not doing that.
well, yeah. Yeah, well, it's an awful lot of people, awful lot of stories like that, and I think a lot more coming in the coming recession, which will be
Yeah.
hitting, I think, very soon. I've heard that the stores, Walmart and other stores are going to start having empty shelves in 2 weeks because the shipments from China has stopped. They're down by
Uh,
60%. Trump's tariffs will cause a lack of goods, and that will further fuel inflation. So I'd expect in the next month or two, we'll see really obvious financial problems in America, just like during COVID, for very much the same reason. The problem with COVID is the shipments from China stopped. And you get to find out how dependent we are on that. Everything we buy is made in China.
yeah, yeah. If you bought an iPhone in the U that was manufactured in the US,
Yeah.
it's estimated to be in excess of $10,000.
Yep. That's
So
right. That's not an
tenfold
option.
increase.
And they're
Yeah.
already trying to build them in India, is their current plan.
Yeah, we'll see about that, won't we?
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
So,
yeah.
okay, go ahead. Your
Yeah.
turn.
Oh, I got one that's pretty interesting. I didn't know this, there's something called an ESP32 chip. And this is a programmable logic controller, or maybe there's another word for it. It's one of these general purpose processing chips, um, microcontroller. And it turns out a whole lot of little gadgets are made out of these things, including cryptocurrency wallets. So they have it in a lot
Oh,
of places. And it turns out they found a whole bunch of serious cryptographic vulnerabilities in that chip. Really bad stuff. The elliptic curve, you can trick it with the the invalid curve attack, which is really powerful against elliptic curves. Um, it's got a Bitcoin transaction signature forgery vulnerability. It's using an insufficiently random number generator to generate the private keys so you can predict them. It's got really a lot of serious flaws, which means a whole lot of devices are vulnerable.
So, Sam, this is
Yeah.
the ESP32.
Yeah.
So I believe that's like an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi. It's a
Yeah,
like
it's a
20,
microcontroller. Yeah.
yeah, it's like a $20 computer on a chip.
Yeah. And so it's built into a whole lot of little gadgets.
I
And
see.
now they found a bunch of flaws in it. And the whole point of
I
these
see.
gadgets, like, the whole point of hardware crypto wallets, it looks like a USB stick. You store your crypto keys on it, and it's not plugged in, so nobody can steal it. But if they physically steal the device, they're supposed to have your passcode to get in. And there's a whole category of people that try to figure out how to get in without the passcode, both to steal currency and to recover currency from people who lose their passcode, which happens all the time. And
So,
this,
Sam,
yeah.
what's the difference if you steal or if you recover a passcode?
Well, from a technical point of view, there's no difference. And
Yeah.
why we were talking last time about the people where the crook steals your iPhone and then they go in and change your iPhone iCloud password, and then you go to Apple and they say, "Well, we can't get in. If we could get in, then everybody could get in. Then crooks could get in." That's the problem. If you lock the bad guys out, you've also locked out some of the good guys.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
inevitable. Anyway, so
That's why we need a back door.
you could if you that's the only choice, right? You either have a back door and now some of the bad guys get in, or you don't have a back door and now some of the good guys are locked out. That's
Anyway,
yeah.
please continue.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all about that one. It's pretty exciting. But one thing that's interesting is there was a vulnerability that came out in the language Erlang, which I never knew. I actually set it up. It's a strange language. Anyway, it turned out it's used by a lot of servers. And there's a vulnerability, a command injection vulnerability in the Erlang servers that are used all over the place. But what was interesting about it is the vulnerability was reported, and for a while, there was no proof of concept. Then a couple hackers wrote a proof of concept, said, "Hey, this was pretty easy." And so but they didn't publish it. And so this guy said, "Well, I wonder if AI could write that for me." So he fed AI the source code before and after the patch and said, "Read this source code, do the diff, compare it, figure out what's going on, then write the exploit for me." And it worked. It took a couple of revisions, but he got the AI to analyze the source code, analyze the diff, figure out the
Mhm.
vulnerability, and write the exploit and make the exploit work. So this is pretty interesting. This could give great benefit to security researchers using AI for this, and of course, crooks. But I think this is the thing I've noticed myself in the last couple of months. AI is getting a lot better. Like Google's AI is suddenly very good. When I do Google searches, the AI summary is very helpful, and switching to the pure AI mode is often very useful now. And even a month ago, it wasn't. And a couple of months ago,
Hmm.
I was just going back to Bing or something because Google was pretty much useless. And Google has finally stepped up, and their AI is doing a lot better.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, it's a horse race
Yeah.
and somebody's pulling that ahead, somebody's falling behind. Apple is sure falling behind in the AI race, haven't they?
Well, they have, and but to be fair, what they're trying to do is the same thing Microsoft Recall does, and in both cases, it's a huge privacy invasion for very little actual benefit. So nobody really wants it. It reminds me
Yeah.
of like cryptocurrency. You're trying to sell this product, telling me it's great, and when I say, "What is this actually for? Why do I need this?" I don't get a clear answer.
Well, just go into I'm making a joke here,
Yeah.
Sam, but
Yeah.
just go into your supplement store. They have
Same. Yeah,
lots of things to sell you.
they do. Now, but of course, they promise you it will do something awesome, like make you stronger or prettier or something. And if you could get that, that would be nice. But what is that AI's Google AI? What is Apple AI even pretends to do for me? It's going to notice if I have a schedule conflict and remind me. I really care about that. That's a problem in my life. I don't know.
It saves your time.
I'm not noticing a lot of time lost from stuff that AI could do for me. But
I
when
know.
but the Google AI is helping me because a lot of my life is I read a story about some technical thing, then I want to know more about it and write a project. And so I try to do a Google search and find like 5 or 10 blogs and read them and try to piece something together. And now the AI is actually helping do that. So that I
All
noticed.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I got an AI story. This is general AI. Have you been following the debate over this and the petition?
Which one? I
So
think I know.
the question is, should AI be owned by a for-profit company or a
Yeah.
not-for-profit?
Yeah, that's OpenAI. OpenAI originally was going to be charitable and nonprofit, and then they pretty much switched to being profit in a procedure that was of questionable legality, and Elon Musk got really mad.
Yeah. Yeah. So the question is, do we want it like the internet where it's available to all? This is again general AI. In other words, should this be something that benefits mankind, or should this be a for-profit company
Well,
that's in
I've never
charge
heard
of
anybody discuss about it being available for everyone. What I hear them talk about is that it's going to be the Terminator and kill us all.
it? No, they're saying that this should benefit everyone. The internet, although it's become commercialized, initially the internet was for the good of everyone, was it not?
Well, yeah, as far as I see, I don't even know what saying it benefits everyone means. I mean, I think the meaningful question is, do you want government to regulate it? And do you want to let them be a rapacious for-profit company?
Yeah, but is it government who regulates it? No.
Well, it could
Well,
be. Biden tried to, but he ended up writing sort of guidelines that didn't really do much. And Trump promised to pull them all back, like all the regulations against cryptocurrency, too.
yeah,
Go back to just unregulated, laissez-faire capitalism, which I think is where we are. We just have a very thin veneer of pretending it's not true.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think you can regulate it. That's been my argument all along. We don't even know what it is. You can't regulate something when it doesn't even exist yet.
Yeah, that's true. I'm trying to think of an example.
Well, the
It,
internet's a
it-
fine example, right? People, if you
yeah,
regulate internet like it was a newspaper, it would have stifled everything. The fact that it wasn't regulated let people investigate and invent blogs and Facebook and everything.
yeah. I guess the one that comes to my mind is San Francisco
Yeah.
and San Francisco's water supply.
Oh,
And so 120 plus years ago, San Francisco's water came from a whole series of private companies. And everybody obviously needs water.
yeah.
So the voters, and I'm not exactly sure the process, but created San Francisco Municipal Water, and they dammed Hetch Hetchy, and so now it's a municipal water supply. So that benefits everybody, and it takes the profit motive out of it.
Yeah. And there's so much fighting over it, you really need kind of the government to ration it out.
Yeah, and does the government really? I guess is that controlling it? It's
Sure.
it's providing the service to everyone.
No, but
At
but it's a regulated industry like banking, It's even more private than that, though. It's
yeah.
actually a government function.
Yeah. It's a government function. Yeah.
That's usually
But
what you
yeah,
need to do for necessities. Yeah.
yeah, but do you hear? I don't hear people complaining about San Francisco Power and Water.
Well, the farmers in Southern California and Central California are complaining like crazy about the water.
That's a different story. I'm talking San Francisco.
No, I
No,
don't hear
no,
much people talk about it here. There's so many other problems that you hardly even notice.
yeah. Right. You turn the faucet on, you got nice, clean water.
Well, you do, yeah.
And I guess the only debate that I've heard is to get rid of Hetch Hetchy.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a battle that's been going on for many, many years.
Yeah.
Yosemite Valley was also supposed to be dammed and flooded.
Yeah, but I certainly don't want AI to be like regulated like that. I don't think that makes any sense. I mean, I
Yeah,
think the only
yeah,
thing you can do is let all the private companies race to develop it because we're in the early stage where we're trying to invent,
right.
develop it. We need all the startups and all the crazy ideas to be explored right now. And that's why the only argument I've heard
Yeah.
against it, and the one Elon Musk uses, is that no, we have to slow down and inhibit the development because it's going to make Terminator to kill us all. And I read another article today. Some guy that was in the early days of OpenAI has now left and opposes it and says it's an existential risk to humanity. We have to stop this terrible thing. Reminds me of
Okay.
nuclear power when I was a kid, where they said we
Yeah.
have to stop nuclear power. Turns out, in retrospect, it would have been better to promote nuclear power. And I think it'd be better to promote AI, but I don't think it's going to turn into a Terminator and kill us all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we don't know, but yeah, I think it's unlikely.
Remember when they made the first atomic bomb? There were people that said, "What's the chance that this will ignite the atmosphere and kill us all?" They said, "Oh, that's a small chance." They said, "How small?" I was hoping you would say zero. Why do you say small?
And if I remember right, Enrico Fermi was taking bets on it.
You might as well take the bets because you don't have to worry about losing.
That's
This
right.
is like there are people that will sell you like insurance so that when Jesus comes back and you go to heaven, they'll take care of your dog for you or something. I said, that's
Sam,
another.
you just gave me a business idea.
Oh
See
yeah.
ya.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, it's out there. There are people who will take your money to provide that service, you know.
All right, so that's where we are with AI. I got another one for you.
Yeah.
FTC is suing Uber. Do you
Yeah.
know about this?
No.
So FTC is suing Uber over Uber One premium monthly subscription service, which
Oh,
is kind of like Uber Black and food delivery service, all that. So it turns out that customers were too easily or were being, I'll say, sort of tricked or didn't understand that they were signing up for it. There's a monthly fee that you have to pay. But when you try and unsubscribe, it's a nightmare. And somebody just said that they didn't know that they were on it. It took a considerable amount of time. And they had to go through 7 pages of, yes, I want to unsubscribe. Yes, I want to unsubscribe. Yes, I want to unsubscribe.
yeah, that's an old one. I mean, AOL did that. A whole bunch of businesses have done that. They trick you into signing up and then they make it too hard to unsign up.
Well, you know who is the master of this that I know is somebody you probably may have heard about. Her name was Ruth Parasol out of Mill Valley, California. And Ruth Parasol ran let's see, 976, which is a sex call in. These are dial in number days. So back in the 80s. And her and her husband became as wealthy as Bill Gates, their combined wealth. So it turns out that they were getting people's credit cards, and unbeknownst to them, they were being signed up for a subscription service. So Ruth and the husband got sued over this, and they were ordered to pay people refund checks. Now tell me if this is brilliant. When you signed or endorsed the check for the $25, you agreed to subscribe to Ruth and husband's new subscription service, which was the internet.
That
And
can't be
eventually,
legal.
it wasn't legal, but it didn't stop her from doing it.
Yep.
And then she and her husband got together and created partypoker.com, which I believe was another subscription service.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard
So,
there's an online service called Rocket Pay or something where you can sign up and
yeah.
they will find all of the services you're paying for and help you cancel them all, which
I,
is
well,
something you need these days.
I think the way they do this is kind of like Apple Pay us or Google Pay, where they use a virtual credit card.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to pay, you just say, I'm not paying anymore. The virtual card isn't associated with your card.
Yeah. But apparently it'll scan for all your subscriptions and tell you how many
No,
things you're
I
paying
don't
for
know
that you've.
about that.
Well, there's one I've heard advertised that claims it does that. It will find all the things you're paying for that you forgot about. And they say these days people typically have a lot of those things.
Well, Sam, I know some multivitamins that will
Yeah.
slow down Alzheimer's for you. I could sell you. That's my claim.
Yeah.
So
Well,
claims are being made all the time.
yeah. Well, I need to make a bet, like if you get Alzheimer's, then something will happen, and then of course you won't know who made the bet. And anyway, so uh, uh, well, here's one, a mind bender. Um,
Okay.
Quantum computers require quantum entanglement. The different qubits have to be connected by this mysterious process, which led to a lot of Einstein and everybody being freaked out about quantum mechanics. Now, the problem with the current generation of quantum qubits is they're noisy, and the entanglement process is also noisy. So, what they do is they perform something called quantum entanglement distillation. If you want to entangle two qubits, you make 10 qubits and you mix them together and you use them to sort of cancel out the errors in a sort of error
Oh,
correcting process and to create virtual qubits that are higher quality. But no one has really understood this. And now a new paper has come out where they have done the mathematics to refine how this process works, entanglement distillation. So it is a theoretical mathematical advancement that should help develop quantum computers.
I see.
I thought that was
Okay.
interesting. And oh, the
It
other one,
is.
this one's got a good title. You can't lick a badger twice. Have you heard this one?
No.
Okay, it turns out I've been talking about how great the Google AI mode is. I use it all the time. But what these guys did is they went to the Google AI mode and they said, "Hey AI, will you explain this common saying, you can't lick a badger twice?" And it will make up a really plausible explanation for any stupid thing you say because it has no idea whether it's a real saying or not. So it will write a page explaining the etymology, how in middle age Europe, there was a problem at Badgers. And they'll make up some story about this. So people are having great fun with that. It'll come up with a justification for any possible saying you make up, which is a
So,
fundamental type of hallucination. You know, AIs don't know when they don't know because they will just take the words you put in, draw a mathematical curve through it, predict the most likely answer. They don't know if it's true or false. So they'll
so
think about
Sam,
anything. Yeah.
that reminds me of the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, the original one.
I
And
remember
if
that
you
one
remember
vaguely.
that,
Yep.
the dad would say when a word would come up, he'd say, "Oh, that has a Greek origin to it."
Yeah, it's like in the original Star Trek, Chekhov would always say everything was Russian.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting,
And
huh?
not knowing the truth, which is that Donald Trump invented everything. Anyway,
Yeah, of course, of course.
yeah. Well, I think that's all I got. Oh, there was one thing that's kind of interesting. They
Yeah,
developed yet another universal prompt to overcome every LLM safeguards. This keeps coming around. The large language models have the problem of prompt injection, and they haven't really found any good defense. And this team found a universal transferable bypass technique. I couldn't get exact details of how to do it, but they it's called policy puppetry. You have a form of prompt injection that reframes malicious intent in the language of system configuration. And prompts are framed as scenes from television drama, like House MD, in which characters explain in detail how to do something, like create anthrax spores or enrich uranium. And perhaps even more troubling is the technique's capacity to extract the system prompts, which are protected. You know, the words that are put there by the administrator to control its function. That's the most powerful thing, is to get that out. And this new technique will universally leak out the system prompts of every LLM.
I see. I
So
see.
this is the problem. Prompt injection is a really fundamental flaw, and nobody's found a good defense worth a damn for it.
Got it. Got it.
That's a pretty serious thing, you know, to use a computer product with command injection vulnerabilities. That's a really serious. That means you can't trust anything. It means your security barriers can just be turned off.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe the AI will
Yeah.
destroy us all, the world, kill us all anyway.
Yeah. Sam, I just reminded me of one other story. Remember the Tate brothers? Do you know who they are?
Oh yeah, they're sort of sex trafficker, misogynist influencers.
Yeah. So they're kickboxers, I think, in the UK.
Yeah.
They were arrested for human trafficking, rape, and, things along those
He
lines with
runs some kind of
children.
podcast or school how to pick up women or something like that.
Yeah, they did a lot of stuff like that. So was it not quite a month ago? they're sort of under arrest in Romania, and somehow, if you're indicted for crimes like that, you're not allowed to leave the country. But next thing we know, they're back to the U.S. in Florida,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure if they were staying at Mar-a-Lago with Trump, but somehow our government intervened.
Yep.
So it turns out while they were here, they're up to their old tricks again, if you will. And they've left the country. They're back in Romania, but there's claim of rape and torture and things like that by women here, or a woman.
Yeah. Well, that would make
So,
sense. I mean, this behavior is compulsive. That's one of the problems. Uh,
right.
these people keep doing it over and over and over. Yeah.
Yeah. So, interesting about this that how did they get out? And is Trump is saying we need to rid our country of rapists and child molesters,
If
of
they
them
are
these
Hispanic.
if they're illegal aliens, but if
Yeah.
they're Americans, we want them back.
If they're white, yes.
If
Well,
they're
I mean,
white.
he's convicted of rape, and there's like 29 women say he raped him, and it's true of a whole bunch of people like Pete Hegseth. His cabinet, it seems to be a requirement for cabinet position that you're a rapist. So it's not like he has anything against that as long as you're white.
Well, Sam, was he really convicted of rape? And
Yes. Yeah,
no,
the
I
judge
thought,
even came out and clarified it. It was a civil punishment. The judge came out and made the statement. By the way, he's now suing.
oh,
That was one of the lawsuits against news agencies that they dared to say he was convicted of rape, and they say no, it was slightly different than that. But uh,
he was convicted of a lesser charge.
yeah, but the judge came out and said this is what normal people would call rape.
Yeah, yeah, that is true.
Yeah,
But that was ABC News, I
yeah.
think it was,
Yeah,
that
they
was
came out and said
sued.
what I just said, and then they got sued.
Yeah,
And then instead of fighting the lawsuit, they just
they
caved in order
paid.
to
Yeah,
launder a bribe to Trump.
yeah, 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 yeah. All right, Sam, that's it for me. You can
Yeah,
have a nice weekend.
yeah, yeah. That's it for me too.
All right,
So we'll do it again on Tuesday.
sounds good.
Okay.